So the question is, what is logos? And specifically, how can I use this term to improve my public speaking? Those are the questions we're going to answer, so let's get into the details. Hello there and welcome back. I am Alex Lyon, and this channel is called Communication Coach, and we are all about helping emerging leaders, probably like you, with your professional development. Today we're talking about logos. We're doing a three-part series on ethos, pathos, and logos, all of which are persuasive appeals, or ways that we can persuade our audiences and be more convincing. So these are not just academic concepts, they are ways for us to get better at public speaking. I also want to suggest that you stick around to the end of the video. I have a couple of resources that I want to recommend that'll help you with your public speaking. So in terms of logos, I have a lot to say about this, but the first thing I want to say is logos does not mean logic. Not really. The word logic originates from logos, but there's a lot more to it, and if we only use that idea about what logos means, we're really selling ourselves short on the persuasive aspects of this term. So let's talk about what it means in a little more detail than that. First of all, logos is a rhetorical appeal. So ethos and pathos are also rhetorical appeals. And to draw a comparison, pathos is where you appeal to your audience's emotions. Logos is where you appeal to your audience's sense of rationale and logic. So yes, logic is involved, but it's where you're appealing to your audience's need and desire for a good argument, facts, figures, and support and evidence that support that argument. So there's a lot going on here that deserves to be unpacked. So I'm going to talk about three ways that you can maximize the logos in your presentations. And we're going to do that by starting with building a sound argument. So as a speaker, when you're preparing your presentations, you have to build a thesis statement or a central claim that you're going to push through your entire presentation. That's really the first step if you want to appeal to people's minds. Pathos appeals to their heart, logos appeals to their mind. Keep that in mind. And by building a sound argument, we mean a couple of things. The first thing that we mean is you have to build your argument on reasonable premises and statements about reality and the topic that your audience already agrees with, that your listeners believe are true. In other words, you have to make reasonable statements that move your audience from one step to the next. You can't jump way out in front of them in some irrational way. They just won't follow you along. So let's pretend I am speaking to a group of people who I want to persuade about some investments to make. Here's an example of a bad way to make a statement that does not resonate with people's sense of reality. If I said, quote, "Everybody knows gold is the best investment you can make," unquote. That would be a very bad statement logically and rationally because not many people are going to agree that gold is automatically the best. There's a huge jump there. What I have to do is pull that statement back down to reality and ground it in a premise that people will agree with. So here's how I would back that off. I would say, quote, "Some people believe gold is the best investment you can make, but is that true? Let's take a look," unquote. So once you have a statement, a thesis statement that's built on premises and truth that people will agree with, you have to then develop that argument throughout your presentation. This is where you break your argument into main points from A to B to C and walk your listeners through this as you do your presentation. So number one, build a sound argument and then break it down into its parts. The second way to maximize logos is to support your argument with good evidence. And by evidence, I mean facts, figures, information, and other kinds of data that support the claim that you're making. And you have to use high quality information. If I want a statistic, I'm not just going to cite somebody's blog or make something up. I have to dig down to a good original source for that statistic and then share that and cite that appropriately. I often, for example, talk about the workplace and I frequently look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics for information. So here's a statistic I found, for example. The Bureau of Labor Statistics estimates that 15% employee turnover is an average rate in the United States. That means that approximately 15% of employees voluntarily quit any given workplace in the average year. That's normal. So that's a good statistic from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which is a high quality source. You want to use good information, good facts and figures. So the third way to build logos, to maximize logos, is to make reasonable connections between your evidence and your claim. So you have your claim, you have good evidence. Now you have to have a tight fit between your claim and your evidence. You don't want to stretch the point. You don't want to give one little statistic and then make some big claim about that statistic. You're going to lose people there. There's a break in rationale and logic there. So here's a bad example of doing this, but there's not a good fit here. Quote, employee turnover in customer service call centers averages about 40%. This shows that call centers are the worst places to work. Now, that's unquote. So you may agree with this. Maybe you've worked in a call center and you hated it. But there's a problem with this statement. I'm saying 40% proves that call centers are the worst places to work. Well, what's missing? What's missing is context and comparison, and I didn't even cite my source that time. So we're really detached from any kind of reality that we can compare this to and evaluate it against. So you have to make sure you build in a good fit between your evidence and your claim. So here's how I would fix that. I would back off my claim and I would bring in a little more evidence for context. So here's how I would say it. Quote, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reports that the average annual employee turnover rate in the U.S. is 15%. However, customer service call centers average 40% annual turnover. That is an extremely high number that signals that something needs to change. So now I sound like a rational person using facts and figures, and it may not sound all that exciting in terms of the actual numbers, but I've brought in comparison, I've cited my sources, and now there's a nice tight fit between my claim and my evidence. So you don't want to stretch or exaggerate the point. You want to bring your evidence and your claim nice and closely together. So the three takeaways to maximize logos in your presentations are: first, to build a sound argument; second, use good evidence; and third, make a reasonable connection between your claim and your evidence. And by doing these three, you will be appealing to your listeners' logical, rational side and be much more persuasive. So earlier I mentioned a couple of resources I would like to suggest if you want to work on your public speaking. The first is a PDF download. You put in your email address and I download you tips on how to become a more composed and confident public speaker. I believe there's 5 or 6 tips in that PDF download. And the other resource is a full course that I have built that is designed to help you become a top 10% speaker in your professional setting. So there are about 3 hours worth of videos and lessons, and it takes you about a month to go through, 1 video per day, and it's really comprehensive. It's called Present Like a Pro. So I will put links to both of those resources in the description below this video. And question of the day, in terms of logos, what are your thoughts on this topic? What are the best ways to build a presentation that appeals to your listeners' rational side? I would love to hear your feedback on that question in that section below the video. I look forward to reading those comments. So thanks, God bless, and I will see you later.